How was everyone? Sorry it took so long. Twitter was being stupid and would not post. I tried like 3 times, so I had to go through their desktop. Is this working? I'm not even entirely sure now. Yeah, I can hear my voice. Okay. It has been a busy week. I had to take my car in and get that fixed, and they didn't have the part, so they had to order it, and I just left my car there. But I have it back now. And then I got a slight cold, which is never fun. But I feel much better today. I don't think there's anything else. I have things I need to do after stream, so we should just jump right in so I can get it done earlier than later. Okay. I hope this works better. I did change the layout a little bit. Okay. Yes, we have... Okay, music is bothering me to know when I'm turning my side off. It's just a little too cheery for me today. I really like Alicia. We'll do the new guys first and then do Alicia. In the 113th minute, Marco stopped the ball and hit the perfect shot. Goal. Argentina had lost in the World Cup final. It was over. Game over. Oh, come on. I had stayed up the whole night for this. I pounded the table as hard as I could. No one was going to complain anyway. Everyone had already gone home, otherwise I wouldn't be here watching the final all by myself. Geo had been over. Hello. How are you? Had been over a month ago. My best friends were all traveling around the country. No, around the globe. One would have to be completely nuts to still be living in the school dorm. Yes, I was talking about myself. Well, Jimmy too. Since my family was moving and my parents were both too busy with their jobs, they had told me to stay at school for a couple more days. What was worse, I had to be in charge of moving myself, so I was unable to go out and have some fun. The last summer of high school wasted. I didn't know what Jimmy had been up to recently. See, it wasn't even 5 a.m. yet, and he was still already gone. Well, we wouldn't be spending too many more days together anyway. Jimmy had said his father's business seemed to be going well now, so they would be going back to Hong Kong soon. I had told him I would like to do a formal send-off for him, but by formal, I just meant getting some grilled chicken wings at the grill bar near school. He said it wasn't necessary. What a killjoy. Yawn, I was so tired. I decided to eat that apple before I went back to bed. I rinsed the apple off and put it on the desk, but I accidentally knocked it onto the floor. You dare hide from me, Apple? I'm gonna wash you again, and you're still getting eaten. I looked down and noticed a basin under Jimmy's bed. It was giving off a faint smell. I had a bad feeling about this. I pulled it out from under the bed out of curiosity. Oh boy, dear God. I didn't really believe in God, but I had to call out his name. It was filled with dirty clothes and stinking socks all submerged in water. Was he trying to, hand wash these clothes? And the real problem, who knew how long these have been there? I didn't even dare to guess the age of the little mushrooms that were growing and thriving on the clothes. How did you never notice until just now, if it's such a bad smell? A strong sour smell filled the air. Just like that, it was sitting in the middle of our room for over an hour. Jimmy finally came back. I had decided not to go to sleep just so I could confront him about this disgusting thing. I had been staring at it the entire time, and I felt like I might pass out at any moment. Jimmy, did you ever worry about us getting cancer with a chemical weapon like this in our room? Alright, I'll clean it up now. And then he just dumped the entire basin, including the mushrooms, all into the common washing machine. Dear Lord. I had to call out his name once again. Jimmy had always been a great friend, smart, reliable, and loyal. The only problem was that he never cared about hygiene. I had always considered myself to be pretty messy, but I never imagined I would meet someone even worse. I was stunned. Oh, I didn't realize we were gonna learn more about Rocky. Okay. Guess that answered that question of who it is. The weather had been getting warmer. I sat on the roof of the classroom building watching the boys down on the basketball court. They were trying to compete to see who looked the coolest while making a shot. So childish. A few days ago, photos of me and Mr. Wan had been posted on the school's BBS, and it had gone viral in school. I had to explain the whole thing to Miss Yang and even the school supervisor. People in the school eventually learned that we were neighbors and that we had not been living together. So there were some trashy people who insisted that it was not a coincidence that we were living so close. There were even some more blatant people who would follow me after school. However, these people were not going to get anything, because ever since that day I had not seen him myself. He hadn't come to school, he hadn't been home. The lights have been off every night. I didn't have the courage to go and knock on his door even though it was right next to mine. Maybe he had moved away since I had brought him too much trouble. Just when my mind was racing all over the place, I got a text from Jing. Breaking news, Mr. Wan is back. The art class this afternoon will resume as normal. I couldn't believe my eyes. However, he must have gone missing all these days because of the photos and everything. If I went to his class, wouldn't people in class gossip about us? Then I would be causing him even more trouble. But if I didn't go, people would still gossip, right? Ugh, what should I do? The dessert today in the school cafeteria was yogurt. I opened yogurt for dessert. Okay. I opened a cup, but then didn't really have much of an appetite for it, so I just left it on the table. It was so hot today. I moved my hand and knocked it over. The yogurt spilled all over the floor, making a big white mess. I took out some napkins and wiped the floor absent-mindedly. By the time I was done, the art class was already over. I lay on the roof staring at the gray sky. Another text from Jing. The classroom was full today. You should have been there to see how I shut these people up for bad mouthing you. Oh, and at the end of class, Mr. Wan tore up everyone's sketches. This man. I probably should have gone to the class. What should I do about the class that day, the day after tomorrow? Hey, I just realized, have Jimmy and Rocky both graduated from high school already? Lee's letter was about something that happened not long after the previous incident, but she must still be in high school, right? You're right. Even though these letters arrived together for us, the events they experienced might not have happened at the same time. In fact, they could have happened days apart, or months, years, even centuries apart. For us, time is not an absolute concept. It's only relative. When we receive their letters, it's purely determined by the casual links among them. For example, we have received a letter saying that Jimmy would be going back to Hong Kong after graduation. That means this event was already bound to happen. I see. What if I just move everything to Rocky's side? I lay on the roof, staring at the gray sky. I was counting the clouds. To go, not to go, to go, not to go. I didn't know how many I had counted them before I fell asleep. I didn't wake up until it was already dark. There was a new text message on my phone. The classroom was full today. You should have been there to see how I shut these people up for bad-mouthing you. And at the end of class, Mr. Wan tore up everyone's sketches. This guy probably should have gone to class. Jimmy had always half as everything, and he had never followed through with anything. He would never learn if I didn't teach him a lesson this time. Plus, I really couldn't stand this any longer. His dirty clothes and the mushrooms had spilled on the floor, with the smelly water flooding throughout the room. Here came the star of the show. Jimmy just walked in. He let out a grunt of surprise and immediately walked over to his bed to pick up his precious gaming console. He had even stepped over a few mushrooms. You win. Jimmy recognized my anger and started cleaning the room without a word. As long as he had learned his lesson. Well, we'll try that. Nope. You should be able to get. I have absolutely no idea what it could be. I'll just look it up. Okay. So it says, strong smell. It was very hot and sitting in the middle of the room should be the answer. The yogurt tasted kind of strange, or stranger than usual, I should say. Well, if it had gone bad, that would actually be great for me. I could just go and hide in the infirmary with a stomachache as an excuse. With such a legitimate reason, nobody could say anything else about me. I held my breath and drank the whole cup. The art room was on the way to the infirmary. I couldn't help myself, so I snuck up to the back door and tried to peek inside through the small glass window. Rocky was sound asleep, drooling with his mouth open. Jean was so focused, Mr. Wan would be insane to tear up her sketch this time. Mr. Wan was standing with his back towards me, looking at Jean's sketch. He must have liked it to be looking at it so closely. I stood up on my toes and tried to see her sketch for myself, but he suddenly turned around. Thank God I crouched down just in time. However, the sudden movement must have caused my stomach to start hurting. It felt like it was a bad cramp, and it was getting worse and worse. I leaned against the door and crumpled. I felt like I was dreaming. In my dream, he was carrying me on his back and asked me where I wanted to go. I said I wanted to go and see the rainbow on Shinglong Mountain. I heard that the rainbow was gorgeous there. He said okay, but Shinglong Mountain was hard to get to. Even taxis couldn't take us, so Mr. Wan kept carrying me on his back, and he kept running, and running. I fell asleep in the dream too, but did we ever get to see the rainbow or not? Nevertheless, it didn't really matter. I just wanted the dream to last a little longer and longer and longer. Well, I said we were gonna do Alicia's next. At the southeast corner of Hong Kong Island sat the largest and most secure prison in the city, Hong Kong Central Prison. I gave the guards at the entrance the name Warden Christ. They glanced at my They glanced at my stripper outfit, casually flipping through the stuff in my tiny handbag and letting me through. No one else was in the warden's office except Chris. Chris? There was radio playing next to the sofa. It was playing some unknown Latin music. Warden Chris' special hobby was likely the only weakness in this concrete fortress. He liked Latin music. Moreover, on the last day of every month, he would invite a young female dancer into his office. None of these girls have ever been seen again. Some people had suggested that they might have gotten new identities to start new lives somewhere else. Others insisted that they were dead. In any case, that was the only information I had managed to gather. The uncertainty made the mission tonight a little risky. Nevertheless, it was the only way for me to approach him. I ignored the warden's leering looks and started dancing to the music. I didn't know the song, but the familiar melody made me feel nostalgic. For a brief while, I felt like I was back in Mexico. I could imagine myself strolling down the street of the lovely Costa Pico, bathing in the warm sunshine, waving hello to everyone, saying Buenos dias. I extended my hand towards the warden and shot him a passionate and inviting look. He grabbed my hand. I felt a sudden pain in my stomach. I had to run into the bathroom. For some reason, my stomach suddenly started hurting. It gave me a bad feeling about tonight. If I had proceeded with the mission, it was probably not going to go smoothly. My instincts had never been wrong before. A few minutes later, I escaped through the bathroom window. Never force yourself when you are feeling uncertain. Ray had taught me that. However, Warden Chris had already seen my face, which meant I couldn't attempt this mission anymore. But even if we sent someone else, it would be much riskier to follow the same strategy. I screwed up, Ray. Officer Eon was still in the hospital. Meanwhile, Officer Ming Yoon had not shown up for work for a few days either. Lieutenant King had mentioned that he had been absent for health reasons, so he and I were the only active members of Unit 4 at the moment. We were in room 403 of the Sunshine Apartments, but there was no sunshine at all. The room had no furniture except a fridge, a microwave, and a simple gas stove, and some bowls and dishes that had not been used in a long time. The thick window shades had blocked all the light out for months, too. The whole room smelled like mold. However, it was the perfect location for surveillance. I quickly set up the telescope and pointed it at the window in the middle of the third floor of the opposite building. I could see through this telescope that a full-figured woman was having breakfast. Her lover was a drug dealer in the Yusengon team of the Musan gang, who overseed the transport of all their goods. He was Also an important suspect in a murder case from a few days ago, and he hadn't been seen in the last few days. This was my first time partnering with Lieutenant King. I had not been in Unit 4 for long, but I had come to learn that it was nothing like the rumors that I had heard. Unit 4 didn't have a lot of people, but it had abundant talent, an amazing marksman, a master of transfiguration, not to mention the lieutenant himself, who was a hidden beast. Lieutenant King had told me the truth about what happened to him during our fight after Officer Ji Yeon was stabilized. He told me that I had met his other personality named Yongyeon. He was a different person altogether. Yongyeon was very violent, and he didn't have access to Lieutenant King's memories. Therefore, for the safety of his colleagues, he would usually only go on solo missions. I couldn't believe it at first. I had suspected that Lieutenant King was just yanking my chain because he didn't trust me yet, and he didn't want me to know the true source of his power. However, when I later went to visit Officer Ji Yeon, she had told me about her own experience when she first joined the unit, including the same story about the lieutenant. That was when I finally realized it was all true. Multiple personalities were not common, so the lieutenant had always kept it to himself, especially when it came about where it came from. In any case, the small quirk did not stop me from feeling closer to him. Although he was a weird person with a strange temper, he cared about us deeply. Just the other day, he had gone screaming at Unit 3 because their men wouldn't shut the bathroom door properly, and it was making my seat smelly. It was so awesome. As for the rumor about how no one wanted to join Unit 4, that was a total lie. They must have all just been sent away by the lieutenant because they had been too weak. Yes, that must be the case. It was my first surveillance mission since joining the force. The more I thought about getting to be with the lieutenant alone for the next few days, the more excited I felt, and wondered if he was willing to spar with me. Actually, how about now? Lieutenant King, would you like to exercise a little? Beep, beep. The doorbell buzzed with terrible timing. I opened the door and a young woman was standing outside. She said, she was a freelance writer who lived next door. She saw that there was a new neighbor, so she wanted to come by and say hello. The writer had asked me what we did. She kept asking me a lot of random questions. There were so many that I became completely lost. I liked beautiful women, but I couldn't handle them. Just as I was stuttering hopelessly, Lieutenant King came to the rescue. He explained to her that we were brothers and we had just moved into the city. He was a journalist and I was his little brother who was a chef. I couldn't help but give him a look when I heard the last bit. After spending some more time with him, I learned that Lieutenant King while extremely strict most of the time, also had lots of tricks up his sleeve. The writer had not stopped ogling the lieutenant ever since she had first laid eyes on him. See, that was our lieutenant, attractive in every possible aspect. He quickly got rid of her, then told me to keep an eye on the room that we were watching before he left. He must have gone grocery shopping in preparation for the next few days. I used to hear Officer Ming-Yoon tell stories about how they'd always had nothing but kimchi-flavored ramen. It wasn't particularly healthy, but as part of the mission, I was perfectly fine with ramen. Besides, I love kimchi. However, 20 minutes later, all I could see in front of my eyes was entire grocery bags of ice cream. Well, that's a lot of ice cream. My heart was bleeding. How did I forget that Lieutenant ate nothing but high-calorie junk food? Officer Ming-Yoon must have bought the ramen himself. I sat next to the lieutenant and resigned myself to my fate. I kept an eye on the mistress while munching on ice cream. I ate an ice cream cone while she was watching TV. I ate an ice cream cone while she was watering the flowers. I ate an ice cream cone while she was making lunch. I ate an ice cream cone while she was taking a nap. I ate an ice cream cone while she was ice creaming. When it was almost sunset, the ice cream was starting to make the ice cream for the night, and my ice cream began to rumble. Oh. Ice cream, 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 ice cream. The doorbell buzzed in an inopportune time once again. I opened the door. It was the writer again. She was carrying a bag of groceries. You guys haven't eaten dinner, have you? Shall we eat together? I have some extra food. Besides, I would really love to witness the chef's skills. She walked past me and straight into the house. She changed into a pair of slippers while standing in the doorway and kept peeking around the room. I could tell that dinner was not her real purpose. However, my stomach was full of ice cream and had me on the edge of a meltdown. Looking at the bag of fresh veggies and meats, I couldn't help but salivate over it. Wait a second. The chef? Was she referring to me? Well, Lieutenant, shouldn't you be responsible for your lives? Just as I was thinking about him, Lieutenant Kang came up to the doorway too. He slammed one hand on the wall with a bang. At the doorway, Lieutenant Kang stared at the writer with a lustful look. What a shame we've just eaten. Sure, ice cream, although I usually go to bed later than my brother here. Wait, what? Who between us always starts setting his bed before 7 p.m.? Can I come over later? I'm not a bad cook myself. Who can cook a milkshake? Well, you could just take the stuff out of the fridge and set them aside for half an hour. To my surprise, the writer seemed really into the idea. In that case, I wouldn't bother you now then. Well, goodbye, but leave the food. As for tonight, I don't sleep until late either. You're welcome to come join me for a late night snack. You look so excited that I think you could go for days without sleeping at all. At least the writer finally left. I let out a sigh of relief and went back to the window. Oh crap, the person at the bottom of the building was the drug dealer who we had been waiting for. He was about to take off. We rushed downstairs, but there was no sight of him anymore. For the next few days, we never saw him show up at his mistress's place. Considering that he had left in such a hurry, probably would not be coming back anytime soon. Mission failed. Yeah, let's try that. It must be the ice cream. I sat on the toilet and let everything run its course. When I finally got out of the bathroom, both the writer and lieutenant were already gone. Not until later did I learn that while I was in the bathroom, the lieutenant had seen the drug dealer show up at the house of our surveillance target. He didn't want to interrupt me, so he had gone after the guy alone. In the end, the drug dealer eventually outran him after more than a dozen blocks. If I had gone with him, we would have been able to catch the guy for sure. Damn it, it was all the ice cream's fault. Perhaps my passion had infected the warden too. He had begun to get a different look in his eyes. There was something twisted and dangerous about that look. I felt a little uneasy. I decided to make my move immediately so I could complete the mission and protect myself before being exposed. But he grabbed my left hand so tightly that I couldn't get out of his grasp. Should I forcibly pull my hand out and risk being exposed, or should I wait patiently for the next opportunity? Then he kissed me. It was already too late by the time I noticed the strange taste in my mouth. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the sky, and then the ocean and the beach. I was lying on an empty beach, naked, with bruises all over my body. If I was a regular girl who had not been through 4 years of assassin training, I would have died by now. So that was where the other girls had gone. They had been abused and dumped in the ocean. However, Miss Warden Kreis had already seen my face, which meant that I couldn't attempt this mission anymore. But even if we sent someone else, it would be much riskier to follow the same strategy I screwed up, right? Well, whoa. Warden Kreis suddenly began struggling to breathe. He fell to the ground while grabbing his own neck with his hand. His face turned a dangerous purple color. He would never see the tiny scratch on the back of his neck that was killing him. I calmed myself, took off the poisonous fake fingernails and the excessive dress and jumped out the bedroom window. Okay. Go. I had barely pulled my pants up when Lieutenant King grabbed my arm, led me out from the bathroom, and kept running outside. We ran into the drug dealer, who was just leaving the building on the opposite side of the street. He took a look He took a glance at Lieutenant King and immediately started running as soon as he recognized him. The guy was pretty fast. We ran after him for a few blocks before we finally trapped him in a small alley from both ends. The next day in the interrogation room, he was very tight-lipped, refusing to answer any of our questions. After half an hour without any progress, Lieutenant King stood up and turned off the video camera. He went back to his seat and leaning closer to the table, he whispered to the guy, "How about we make a deal?" A deal? What kind of trick was Lieutenant King trying to play now? The guy was apparently as curious as me. He leaned forward, waiting to hear what the lieutenant had to say. Lieutenant King pulled out a switchblade. He flicked it open and stabbed it into the back of the guy's left hand in one clean move. This guy screamed out loud, but he didn't move, worried about hurting his hand even more. I suppose even he was unwilling to risk his own life. He finally started talking while he shook in pain. If I answer your questions, are you going to recommend a lighter sentence?" Lieutenant King smiled and pulled the knife out. He put it away without even wiping the blood off. After he gave us his statement, the dealer took off his jacket and threw it aside while cursing nonstop. That was when I saw a giant green python tattoo on his left arm. The lieutenant suddenly went quiet. I called his name more than a few times before he came back to himself. He stood up, patted me on the shoulder, and before he left the room said to me, "He's yours now, make him pay." Okay. 2 p.m. The 32nd floor of the Shillong Court building, the woman's restroom. I pressed the button on my phone, timed to the movement of the hand on my watch. Almost immediately, I heard a muffled boom from the bottom of the building. The entire building shook slightly for a few seconds and made a slightly grinding sound. I heard the latest instructions coming from the building's security team leader on the radio, broadcast through their dedicated security channel. He wanted 2 guards on the top floor and the rest on the ground floor. I turned off the radio and walked out of the bathroom in a janitor's uniform. I blended into the crowd of panicked and confused salarymen. Then I ducked into the security stairwell and went up the 33rd floor, the highest floor of the building, which was reserved exclusively for the chief executive of the corporation. I reached for the knife hidden in my waist. I planned to ambush the 2 guards before they noticed me. However, there was no one in the hallway. I opened the door to the president's office. There was no one there either. I began to scour throughout the office. When I opened the closet, a body rolled out from inside. The door was kicked open. I took 2 steps back, then sprinted forward and burst through the window. I held onto the rope with my right hand and descended all the way to the ground from the outside of the building. A couple of people had seen me while I was dropping down and let out some admiring and terrified gasps. But their attention was soon pulled away by the explosion from the top floor. The body in the closet had been my target tonight, the president of the Shillong Corp, Liang Zhilong. Someone had gotten to him before I could. What I couldn't understand, though, was why a bomb was tied to his body. It was the kind of bomb that would detonate upon disturbance or when the timer ran out. It was much more powerful than the one I had made. I could only think of one reason. The other assassin had known that someone else was after the same target, so it had been a prank. In fact, my mission tonight was more than just killing Liang. There was something else. I was supposed to retrieve a black metal box that he had. I had no idea what was inside the box, but it must be something extremely important. However, I was afraid that the box had fallen into the hands of the other assassin too. Who could this person be? Had he known that Ray had been looking for the same box? Was the prank specifically designed for me? Pain from my left arm interrupted my thoughts. Only then did I realize that my left arm had been blown into pieces. My left palm had completely disappeared. Lieutenant King was not here, neither was Officer Minyoon or Officer Ji Yeon. I was alone in the office working on the suspect's statements and feeling a little lonely. The lieutenant had told me to make him pay. Officer Jing Yeon had said to me that Lieutenant King used to tamper with the amount of goods and money when dealing with smuggling cases so the criminals would get a heavier sentence. But this guy was already an accomplice to a murder. How could I make the case worse? I didn't know what to do. I was scratching my head when the phone on the lieutenant's desk rang. It was an anonymous tip to a murder. However, Lieutenant Unit 4 usually handled cases related to gang violence or drugs. Why would we get a tip about a murder? I wasn't sure how to deal with this situation, although I didn't have much at hand to deal with right now anyway. My heart of justice was beating with excitement. I grabbed my gun and walked out. I was about to take the stairs when I heard someone yelling loudly behind me. I turned around. It was Lieutenant Kim of Unit 3. Lieutenant Kim asked if I was heading to the murder scene reported by the anonymous tip earlier. He said I should not go alone and that he was coming along with me so that we could look after each other. It seemed like a good idea. We got into his patrol car and started the siren. 20 minutes later, we arrived at the apartment building of the scene. It was a 2-floor rental building. I could vaguely see fire through the windows of one apartment. In the middle of the second floor, something wasn't right. Anybody home? I knocked on the door. There was no response. I knocked even harder and yelled some more, but still nothing. Lieutenant Kim stopped me and said we should wait for the apartment manager to open the door for us. The whole apartment had been engulfed in fire. When the manager turned the key and touched the doorknob, he suddenly jumped back like he had been shocked. I stepped ahead and grabbed the knob. It felt like a smoldering iron burning my palm. I bit my own lip to stop myself from screaming. As soon as I forced the door open, flames leapt out of the apartment along with a wave of heat. I could almost smell my hair getting burnt. Lieutenant Kim and I took a few steps back. If the tips had been true, there might still be people inside. I took a step forward towards the door, but Lieutenant Kim grabbed me. Are you crazy? Look at that fire. You'll be burned to ashes. We've been here for over 20 minutes. Whoever might still be in there is already dead. He made a good point. We waited until the firefighters put out the fire before we finally went into the apartment. Everything inside had been scorched. All the furniture had been incinerated. We found 2 bodies that were completely unrecognizable due to the fire, one in the bathroom, the other in the living room. We had to send them back for autopsy. We didn't learn the identities of the bodies until the next day. I could not have imagined that they were Officer Ming Yoon and Lieutenant Kang. I should have charged instead. I could have saved them. Give me a sec. I will be right back. Okay. Okay. Um. I recognized the man lying on the floor. Officer Ming's eyes had been open. There was a dark brown stain near his chest on his dark-colored shirt. The blood had already dried. Judging from the amount of blood and the shape of it, it must have been a gunshot wound. The fire was getting worse in the living room. I covered my nose while looking around, but I could barely see anything anymore. The flames were now licking the clothes on Officer Ming-Yoon's body. I couldn't just leave him here. I carried his body out of the fire and handed it over to Lieutenant Kim, who had been waiting at the door. The fire had become too big for us to go back inside. We had to wait for reinforcements from the firefighters. We waited until the firefighters had put out the fire before we went into the apartment again. We found another completely immolated body in the bathroom. The next day, while I was still lamenting Officer Ming-Yoon's death, I heard another piece of shocking news. The second body was Lieutenant Kang. I held onto the rope with my right hand and descended all the way to the ground from the outside of the building. A couple of people had seen me while I was dropping down and let out some admiring and terrified gasps, but their attention was soon pulled away by the explosion from the top floor. My target, the president of Shinglong Corp, had not been in the room. However, he was only part of the mission. I had an even more important task, which was to find a black metal box. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the box either. I spent a long time looking for it. He must have hidden it somewhere that wasn't in plain sight. I could have had more time if it weren't for the bomb that had been placed in the closet by someone. I had burst through the window as soon as I heard the ticking sound coming from inside the closet, but it was already too late. I couldn't feel anything in my left hand. I looked down to where it used to be. Let's see if that works. Before I could check any further, the officers from Unit 3 who had been following us here had pushed me aside and started examining the bodies themselves and taking notes. It was a little strange. I was the one who received the tip in the first place, but the scene had now been overrun by Unit 3. Soon the CSI unit arrived too. I still couldn't quite accept Officer Mignon's death. As the guys from Unit 3 wouldn't let me near the body, I had no choice but to wander around the living room. When I walked past a dresser in the living room, I noticed a knocked over picture frame. I flipped it over. It was a picture of Lieutenant Kane with a woman in her 30s. "Hey, you, don't touch anything." "Yes, you." A man from Unit 3 kicked me out of the apartment. I had to stand by the door and watch them carry out Officer Mignon's body away in a body bag. Even more bizarre, we had found Lieutenant King passed out in the bathroom due to apparent alcohol poisoning. I only found out later that the place had been Lieutenant King's apartment. I held onto the rope with my left hand and descended all the way to the ground from outside of the building. I was also carrying a black metal box in my left hand. I had accidentally found the box when I dropped down to the floor to get away from the heavy smoke. It had been glued to the bottom of the couch. Either this metal box is like really skinny or the couch is really tall. Although Liang Jinglong was nowhere to be found, Ray had instructed me that the metal box was my top priority. The officers broke into the office just after I escaped through the window. I could hear him directing their whole team to go after me, but it was already too late. I started my motorcycle and went into full throttle. Minutes after I arrived at the back alley behind Melody Hall, Ray opened the box in front of me. Inside was a box of 2 cubes the size of a palm with different markings on them. Ray gave me a reward after he made sure the items were intact. After that day, I had a dragon tattoo put on my stomach. Ray said that I earned that mark as evidence that I had truly became his. Okay, so it should be and that should give us the X rank. floor. I recognize the man laying on the floor. Why would he be here? Where on earth was this place? What had happened to him? I looked around the living room. A lot of empty beer bottles were scattered on the floor, most of which were empty. Some of them were not empty though, and the beer had spilled all over the place. There were still a lot of burning candles on the floor too. Lieutenant King is passed out over here. I heard Lieutenant Kim's voice coming from the bathroom. Lieutenant King, why was he here too? I got back up and walked to the bathroom. When I walked past a dresser in the living room, I noticed a knocked over picture frame. I flipped it over. It was a photo of Lieutenant King with a woman in her 30s. Lieutenant King looked much younger in the photos. He even seemed a little shy. Both of them were in uniform with their gun holstered. I couldn't look away from the woman in the photo for a long time. Then I finally remembered. She had been the previous lieutenant of Unit 2. Yay, gay gal? A legendary figure in the Busan police precinct. She was a beautiful woman, but more importantly, she was considered to be better than any of the male officers in the on the force. She was famous for being incredibly courageous and decisive. She was the idol of almost every young police officer. Even during my days in the academy, a lot of my classmates had her photos in their private collections. That was how I had recognized her. The photo had obviously been taken before she had been killed in the line of duty. Lieutenant King looked like he had just joined the police too. Perhaps he was a fan of hers too. There was nothing strange about that. So this must be Lieutenant King's home. Why would Ming Yun's body be here then? I suddenly remembered the anonymous tip, and I was starting to get more and more suspicious. Officer Ming Yun had been shot. He was still in his undercover outfit, which I had seen a few times. I went back to check on his body, and there was nothing else in his pockets, but I did notice a keychain attached to his waist. His wrist. Waist. I heard Lieutenant Kim walk out from the bathroom. He must be wondering why I hadn't responded yet. I quickly took the keychain off and hid it. Please, Buddha, please bless me. Bless me so I can find the truth and avenge Officer Ming Yun. How did it end up like this? How could Officer Ming Yun be dead? Carlos, will I ever see you again? Stop. Stop. Oh, it was just a nightmare. No, it was more than that. Everything had already happened in reality, but I have tried everything I could. I thought it was raining. However, everything outside looked exactly the same as when I first woke up after losing my memories. The sky is still red. Snow keeps falling down. Even the snow looks red, perhaps because of the light. There doesn't seem to be anyone in the buildings on either side of the street, and there aren't any people in the street. There aren't any animals either. No small birds or little dogs. Nothing. There aren't even any trees or grass. The rain only appears in my dreams. It has never stopped snowing outside the window. Is that what the God's world looks like? I wonder what the human world looks like right now. Yo, you're up early. What time is it now? 4 o'clock in the morning. It's only 4. Nothing seems to change outside the window. I can't even tell whether it's morning or not. The human world has night and day, right? Why don't we have that? That's because we live in a different world. Willie, I want to go outside for a walk. I'm afraid you can't do that. Why not? To us, there is no outside. Everything you see from the window is just an illusion. This house is all there is to our world. Are you telling me that everything that I see outside the window is fake? That's correct. Everything outside is fake. Even the house that we are living in right now doesn't really exist. All of this is built by our combined imagination. Our world and the human world has no intersections at all. Not in time nor in space. Well, could we go to their world at all? By teleportation, for example, like you did earlier? Or maybe there is a door of some kind that could open to any other place you wanted to go. Why do you want to go to their world so much? I haven't been feeling too well recently. This job. It's not like what I first imagined it would be. I thought I could give everyone a perfect happy ending. But tragedies keep happening one after another. I don't know what I have done wrong. I do not understand them well enough because I'm not human, or is it because I'm not familiar enough with their world so I cannot understand the consequences of my decisions? So you want to go there and witness their lives for yourself? Yes. Unfortunately, we are unable to go to their world. Besides, we don't really need to. We are gods. All we need to do is fulfill the humans' wishes. It is not our duty to create a wonderful world based on our judgment. You have too much kindness in you, and that's why you are overthinking it. No matter what decisions you make, the humans will accept them, simply because they have no other options. But we're gods. How can we be so careless with their sincere wishes? Psst. Humans never truly understand what they want ever. They get themselves into trouble, but they are afraid to take responsibility of their actions and choices. That's why they always hope the gods can fix everything for them. God will help me. God will bless me. There is nothing but a bunch of cowards and losers. As long as we resolve their immediate dilemmas, we have done our job. As for the other problems that lie in their future, those have nothing to do with us. The bottom line is this: even if we don't help them at all, they have no right to complain. After all, we are gods, and they are just mere humans. Therefore, no matter what we do, you are always right. You will never be wrong. But I understand it might be a little difficult for you to accept this right now. You should just go and take a nap and get some rest. We talked enough today. I'll go make us some breakfast. Was I really overthinking things? Well, maybe I have to do it myself. Oh, 3 letters. We'll do these individual ones next. We'll do Alicia's first. JL 7042, the flight from Hong Kong to Tokyo. This was my first time on a plane, yet I wasn't excited as I had imagined I would be. I closed my eyes, hoping that I could fall asleep until landing. After a while, the plane encountered some turbulence. My face tightened a little. Not because I was scared, but because I was annoyed that it had disturbed my dreams. I was dreaming of Carlos. In the dream, we had finally gotten to see each other again. It was Late at night, even though we had not seen each other for such a long time, neither of us had said anything. It was so dark that I couldn't even see what he looked like as a grown-up. His lips moved, he was about to say something. But suddenly the ground beneath us morphed into an enormous wave and swept me away. I opened my eyes. The boy next to me handed me one of his earbuds. He probably thought I was afraid. Such tender music was flowing out of the earbud. I smiled at him with gratitude. He had short and curly dark hair. He looked like he was about 18 years old. Carlos would be around that same age now. I fell asleep again, although I didn't go back to the same dream this time. 4 hours later, at the front desk of the Prince Hotel in Shinjuku, I was checking in. Coincidentally, I ran into the boy who was next to me on the plane. Also coincidentally, his room was right next to mine. He said his name was Lin. He was on a trip by himself and suggested that we could travel together if that was okay with me. I agreed, but it would have to wait until after I finished my business here. The sun was about to set when he knocked on my door. He told me that he rented a car and asked if I would like to take a ride with him along the beach. I said yes. His eyes were a little red, and we didn't say anything to each other on the way. He didn't go directly to the beach. Instead, he circled around Shinjuku a couple of times at first. If he wasn't so upset, I would have almost suspected he had figured out who I really was. I never knew that the target this time was still a kid. Half an hour ago, I had received an instruction from Ray. The target this time was a person staying in the room next to mine, Lin. He was the only kid of the boss of Lin Inc., who ran the Black Dragon gang. Whenever Ray gave me an assignment, I never questioned his reason. Although this time, I didn't really need to ask. The big boss of Lin Inc. was in his final years. Some elders in the corporation had brought up the idea of looking for a successor. Obviously, the big boss wanted his own son to succeed him, and everyone knew it. But I knew Ray too well. He wanted to be the successor. The gang had plenty of enemies in the criminal underworld. This time, Lin was traveling to Japan alone without any bodyguards. It meant that this would be the perfect opportunity for Ray to take him out of the equation. It was quite windy by the ocean. There were a couple of tourists hanging around the beach. I planned to complete the assignment once they left. Lin stood there facing the ocean. He closed his eyes and spread his arms. He looked like a bird who was about to ride the wind and fall into the sky. Miss, have you ever thought about what we live for in this world? I fixed my hair that was flying in the wind. For me, simply being able to live is good enough. I never thought about something so deep. Lin kept his posture. Well, do you have an important person in your life? I do. I looked at the ocean. He put his arms down. What would you do if you couldn't be with that person? I'd wait. He looked back at me. His face was covered in tears. What if you knew that you'll only be waiting for nothing? I suddenly realized I had never thought about this possibility. Miss, I know what you were doing here. I had seen many other people like you. Lin unbuttoned his shirt and revealed the numerous horrifying scars on his body. In 2 years, my father will hand the company to me. Miss, you of all people should know how many people want me dead. All of these years, the only wish had been to be with the person on my birthday. I was born in winter near Christmas. I would always dream about the two of us decorating our own Christmas tree, walking along the festival streets, and holding hands like a real couple. But year after year, I could never make it happen. And I will never be able to make it happen in the future. I will not let the person I love get hurt because of me. So I can't be with that person, not in this life. I'm tired of a life like this. The last tourist had left the beach. He gave me one last smile and started walking into the ocean. The water gradually went over his wrist, over his waist, his shoulders. A few minutes later, I dived into the ocean. I grabbed his hand. I gasped for the salt. I gasped from the salt-tasting air, feeling like I was going to be swallowed by the crushing waves at the very moment. I lay there on the beach. I was completely wet. Lynn was lying next to me. Why didn't you just let me die? Isn't that your mission? Why? I didn't know. Perhaps I was hoping that there was another possibility for him. It had been 10 days. I still didn't have a strategy to help him. Although I worked for Ray, I didn't really have all the information in the organization. Even in the gang, not a lot of people were aware of my existence. Therefore, I hadn't had any useful connections. I was sitting on the couch in my room. A bunch of empty candy boxes were piling up next to my hand. Lynn must be an extremely important target to Ray. Letting Lynn go meant that I had betrayed him. And I might have made the stupidest decision in my life, but out of that one moment of sympathy, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. The person was intentionally keeping them light, so I knew instantly that I couldn't be a regular attendant. My 4 years of training told me immediately that it was someone like me, and he or she was good at their job too. Ray surely wouldn't show me any mercy. I climbed back up the beach and looked at the dark ocean. The surface was almost pitch black, beneath which hid many invisible but violent torrents. The water was also much colder than I expected, but I could feel the chill in my bones. I dove in a few more times, yet I couldn't find Lee. He had disappeared into the dark ocean. I felt as if a part of me had disappeared with him. The hairdryer was buzzing. I was sitting in my hotel room, drying my hair with my eyes closed. I was afraid. I was afraid that I would see myself in the foggy mirror and that I wouldn't even recognize my own reflection. The moment when Lee had disappeared into the ocean, for a second I thought it wasn't Lee who was floating away from me, but Carlos. I wanted to swim towards him, but what if I had saved him? What else could I do for him? And how could I keep reporting back to Ray? The thought dissipated almost instantly. In the end, I followed my original plan. I came back to the beach at another spot and took a taxi back to the hotel. That same evening, I told Ray about Lee's final moments, but his response surprised me. Starting from tomorrow, you are free. We'll do Jimmy's and then call it for the day. In the largest arcade of Monco, Time Reversal Cup, the Prince of Fighting 97 Nostalgia Tournament. A giant banner was on display. The Time Reveal Cup had been the biggest tournament for the classic fighting game in Hong Kong for a few years. It had also been an important source of income in my post-college independent life. After graduating from college last year, I moved out of my parents' house and rented a 30 square meter studio with a standalone bathroom. I never knew that rent could be so expensive. I never understood why people would want to buy stuff on sale. I never realized that part-time jobs barely paid anything. Not until I lost financial support from my father and mother did I begin to appreciate the challenges of life. Therefore, I must win the tournament. The prize money for winning the championship would be enough to cover my expenses for 3 months. That's a lot of money. I had arrived not too long ago and had been testing my machine. People were beginning to gather around, many of whom kept taking pictures with their phones. As the 2-time defeating champion, I had been placed directly in the semifinals, so I was expecting a little attention. However, today I was feeling very suspicious about every one of these people. I was about to go and hide in the bathroom for a little while before the match. Suddenly, a wave of excitement washed over the crowd. A small kid had just walked up to the machine opposite mine. He was in his school uniform, wearing a pair of glasses, and his hair was parted to the left side. The staff thought we didn't know each other and started making introductions. This is the primary school killer. You must have heard of him. He has no more rivals left in the Simsa Sui area. Last week he challenged the entire North K arcade. Nobody dared even say a word. I never thought he would be my opponent today. I suddenly cursed all the gods and goddesses in my head. And then the punk kid held his thumbs down and made a face at me. The crowd booed loudly. Booing went right into my head along with the history of our rivalry. Now watch out, you punk. Big brother is gonna teach you a lesson for the sake of our parents. Let me show you how to be polite and respectful to your seniors. My Yogami and versus his Kusanagi. 2 games out of 3. In all honesty, our raw talent were almost on the same level, but every time I played this kid, he would always be able to get into my head and mess up my inputs. I would be thinking of punching, but press a kick. I was trashed in my first game. I tried my damn best to win the second game. Here comes the deciding game. The crowd had become wild. Time to go to hell, you little punk. At this point, both our HP gauges were alarmingly low. Our special moves were both fully charged and ready to go as well. If either of us made a mistake right now, the other would immediately land a combo and finish the game. I slightly wiggled my sweaty right hand, and for outfit thing to retreat. The punk kid took the bait he punched lift. Now's my chance, I commanded Yogami to jump behind him, ready to unleash the final combo. Yoseki Yori 2B5A 127 Shiki Aki Hana 127 Shiki Aki Hana 2. After 2 consecutive Akihanas, my opponent had just been thrown into mid-air. It was finally time to end this game with a decisive move. Joystick right. Hard punch C. Ghostly purple flames appeared on Yogami's hands. Light pillars were bursting from the ground, one after another. Desperation move. 108 Shiki Yo Sakasuki? Oh crap, that was the wrong move. It was an amazing move that could stun the opponent, but its only drawback was that it was also slow. So Kanagi quickly air attached away from the pillars, nullifying my attack. The punk kid smiled behind his glasses. So Nagi jumped on top of me and hit me right in the face. I was still in recovery from the previous move, so I couldn't defend myself. So Sanagi then kicked me into the air, raking fire erected in his right hand and held it high. It then turned into a devouring fireball, while I was staring in shock. It blew Yogami into the sky, KO. As Yogami kept flying upwards on the screen, my heart was sinking all the way into the ground. I lost, my prize was gone. Might have to borrow money from my father to cover the rent this month. He would once again try to persuade me to go and work at his company. Mother then would try to set me up on a blind date, forcing me to meet people who I had absolutely no interest in. Yet I would have to pretend to smile the whole time. No, my dear goddess of fortune, please take me away from here. So we just have to change the final move. Hey, Yogami only threw a hard punch. Kusanagi jumped backwards and casually dodged the attack. Wait, where were my desperation move? I froze. The announcer froze. Everyone in the audience froze. I completely panicked. I couldn't even remember what to do anymore, and I just kept mashing the joystick and the buttons. Okay, so I guess we'll just change the orders. Yogami stepped forward, leapt high into the air, and slammed Kusanagi into the ground. Special move 107. Shiki Ao Hana 3. Oh crap, that was the wrong move. How many wrong moves are there, dude? Once the opponent had knocked into the ground, the combo was terminated, but ending the combo with a special move was not powerful enough to KO him. I quickly readjusted the joystick, ready to follow up with a Yomibari to hinder his movement from a distance. However, my momentary hesitation had already decided the results of the game. Okay, we're just looking it up. I'm not gonna go through every single possibility for this. Okay, it says it is this. Okay. Yogame's hands morphed into a blur. He grabbed Kusanagi into the air and slammed him into the ground. His attacks, fueled with every last drop of his power, washed over his opponent like an unstoppable waterfall. Kusanagi couldn't even hold his posture anymore. Desperation move. Kin 1211 Shikio Otami? KO. Yes, 3 months of expenses. See it? How it's done, you little punk? After the ceremony, I was about to duck out of the arcade quietly, but when the punk kid suddenly blocked my way. What, you want to look for a real fight now? Don't you know my fame of beating up both a senior home and a kindergarten on the same day? I quietly thought to myself, congratulations, mister. I brought you this newspaper as a special gift to you. I took the newspaper. It was some random tabloid. Cover page headline: Despicable. Hong Kong youth molest child in the street. What was this? Several months ago, I had beaten up the little punk primary school killer pretty badly in another casual tournament. Then a few days later, an article began circulating on the internet about me taking off my pants on the street and mooning some little kid. There was even a photo to go with it, yet whether you judge it by the shape or the percentage of body fat, that was not my butt in the picture. And the funny thing was, when I tried to remove the censor bar from the picture through some technical magic, I realized that the kid in the picture was exactly this little punk. When had I ever had a picture taken with him? Besides, what kind of twisted mind would make up such a gross and embarrassing idea in the first place? Not to mention actually going through the trouble of faking a photo. Afterwards, I had to hack a dozen websites to delete all of their relative articles. And now you had it printed on paper? I didn't know who was more despicable in this whole ordeal. In any case, the more despicable the story was, the faster it traveled. People would always believe this kind of garbage. People in the arcade were starting to stare at me. I knew they had not just come here for the tournament today. What, did they expect me to tear this paper into pieces and make a scene? Screw you, you little punk. I stuffed the newspaper into the bag with my prize and walked out of the arcade. It was drizzling outside. Life is good was playing in my headphones, I decided not to take a cab and just walk back to my apartment. I bumped into a few people, but nobody gave me any trouble or even a second look. Yeah, why bother yourself with other people's opinions? This was my life, the one I had always wanted. Okay. I am going to call it here. We'll work on Long's Park and Kang's story next week. I think that's who we have, yeah. I'll try to stream again Tuesday. Well, October is always just a bad month for me, apparently. But I will try to get back on schedule. But we will see. I will see everyone next week, though. Have a good day. Bye.